What's up, guys? Welcome to the DoItMovement podcast. This is your host, Martine Jackson, and I've built my 6-figure, soon-to-be 7-figure, massive real estate business through commercial investing, rental investing, and wholesaling in Virginia. After college, I worked a series of jobs that I absolutely hated and decided to take life into my own hands. What my journey has shown me is one very important thing. Knowledge is not power. Applied knowledge is power. Each week, I bring you a powerful guest or tip to unravel the real estate game, and my challenge to you is that you take some of that knowledge and do something with it. The Do It Movement is here to help you create the life you desire through real estate. Now let's get to it. What's up today, Do It Movement listeners? This is your host, Martine Jackson. Today, I am joined with Chevy Limitless herself. How you doing today, Miss Sheveir Ross?
I'm fabulous. You know, I'm quarantined. I went out to get some essential product, but other than that, life is good. Can't complain.
If you're watching the video of this, you'd see that she says she's quarantined, but she's in a car.
The essentials.
I understand. I've been enjoying my quarantine so far. But for the people that don't know who you are, I know you very well, but for the people that don't know who you are, just give an introduction of yourself and how'd you get into real estate?
Okay, cool. So, my name is Sheveir. I got into real estate, I would say back in 2015. It piqued my interest back in 2014 when, all those HGTV flipper shows were on. And I started watching them because I wanted to buy a house for myself. Mm-hmm. And the flipper shows would come on like right after. Mm-hmm. So I started looking at it like, oh, I could do this. And I had this brilliant idea that, maybe if I flipped the house, if I took the money that I was going to use for her, purchasing a personal house, that, maybe I could take it, flip a house, and then, be able to buy my house and then have money left over. Mm-hmm. And, it's on from there. I started watching it with, my boyfriend at the time. We're not together anymore. And he actually went on to flip his first house. He saw it, and we did this Rich Dad Poor Dad webinar together, and he took action right away. He had this big plan, we're gonna do that, we're gonna build wealth that way. And the difference was he went on and flipped a house about 3 or 6 months later, and I was just sitting there I cannot be in the same place 6 months later, mm-hmm. Still sitting there talking about it. And, before you knew it, I met my business partner and we flipped a couple houses together, and that's kind of where I got my footing.
Okay. Well, I feel that this podcast is going to be really inspirational to people because I will say you shared something with me and, I thought I was special. And then Lori said you shared it with her. I was like, oh, but I felt that it was a very good, inspiration to some people because basically, a lot of people will, well, not a lot, but you get into something and let's say you fail at it or you do something that you didn't expect to do and you end up down. And a lot of people just quit after that and they just go back to working regular jobs, but not Chevy Limitless. You got back up and you started crushing it. So I guess let's talk about that. Let's talk about, I guess what happened and where were you and then like what happened, and then how'd you get back to here?
Right. So pretty much, like after I flipped, I forgot what number it was, but one of the things that I realized is like, once I started having a certain level of like success in real estate, I thought I made it. I was like, mama, I made it. And what that means is that, it's one thing to learn how to like make money. Learn how to maintain your money is a whole other ball game. And the mark that I missed was just that, I made all this money in like, real estate and another business I was doing it. And I just kind of like, I didn't think I had to budget anymore. I thought that kind of just went out the window. And, I was like doing a lot of stuff. I was traveling everywhere. I was like swimming with sea turtles in Hawaii. I was like in Thailand walking tigers, and it was dope. I just kind of like, I was kind of like living out my dreams, but really the truth was that I wasn't present to, what was coming in and even what was going out. And before I knew it, back in like, fall of 2017, I'd pretty much like lost everything I had made. And it was like the most money. Remember, I was about 26 years old, and I wasn't used to having that much money. Like, it was just crazy. And fall of 2017, I looked up and I realized, oh shit, I can't even, I can't pay my rent this month. How did that happen?
Right.
And it was kind of like a downward spiral from there, because I was used to always like being really responsible, being good at like stacking, having damn near 800 credit score. And then all of a sudden I can't pay my bills. Right. And that crushed me, because I kind of like created this story around it. Like, wow, like I failed. I'm talking to all these people about, like building wealth and like having financial freedom, and I can't even pay my bills. And I just like spiraled out of control on that one, because one thing that I wasn't used to seeing, like I listened to a lot of like audio personal development. The thing that I didn't hear much were other people's failures. So when I had my own failure, I kind of thought like, damn, maybe I was like dreaming too big. Like, who did I think I was? Like, like maybe this is a sign I should like stop. And it was like probably one of the darkest times in my life, because I remember once I realized like that one moment, I remember like it was yesterday, and it was so pivotal for me. I remember like just like looking at my account, I had like $30 in there, and I couldn't even explain what happened to all that money I had. I couldn't explain it. And I remember just kind of like sinking to the floor, and I was like, God, what happened? Like, I thought you had me. And then, like I went in the shower. I was just sitting there in the bathtub all pathetic, like letting the like shower fall on my face. Like, I don't even know how I'm going to pay November's rent. Like, it was just like, you could kind of get the picture of where my head was going.
Right.
And from that point on, like, the next few months, it was dark. And it was dark, not necessarily because of the circumstance, but it was dark because what I was making the failure mean. Because I was collapsing the failure with the person. And, pretty much I ended up having to go back to work. So I had a full-time job. And after a while, it was like, I kind of started to convince myself, like, maybe I didn't want what I thought I wanted in the first place. And I just convinced myself, maybe working a full-time job ain't so bad anyway, especially if you're the boss, or, especially if they give you a cool perk like a car, like maybe it's not so bad, it's safer here. The thing is that I realized is that, if you have like a dream or like, some purpose in life, it's like your spirit will never be settled unless you go after that dream. No matter how much you try to talk yourself into like, it's safer here, maybe I should stay here. It's like your spirit will never let you rest until you actually go for what you were created to go after.
Right.
And I was kind of like miserable. Like I had convinced myself of this false, sense of fulfillment, but it wasn't real, because I knew like deep down in my soul, I was kind of like, I was created for more. I was built for more. And I wasn't reaching my max potential. And, and then, I wasn't dealing with my finances. Even after I had this job for a whole year, I didn't want to talk about money. Money was a topic I always could talk about, like blah, 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 blah. Like I could talk about money, business, from sun up to sundown. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden I just didn't, everybody knew around me, like that was that one button you didn't push, because I just didn't want to deal with the mess I made. Mm-hmm. And then finally, like, I had a friend, and, one thing I'll put in that really helped me to kind of like, bounce back is the people you surround yourself with. Mm-hmm. I was really like blessed to like have people around me that even at my like darkest moments, it's like they always saw me beyond where I was. It's like deep down they knew who I was, and they always like affirmed me. Like I have one friend, she calls me Oprah all the time. I have another, it's like, ooh, I'll take it. I had another friend, she challenged me. She was like, hey, Sheveir, like, do you think millionaires have budgets? Because it's always been a dream of mine to be a millionaire. I come from a third world country. Ain't nobody in my family ever been a millionaire. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to be the first. So I was like, yeah, I don't think millionaires have budgets. Why would they need budgets? She said, got it. Let me ask you a different way. Do you think businesses have budgets? And I was like, oh, I get it. Mm. And then I read The Millionaire Next Door, and that book was so pivotal for me, because I had this mindset that like when you have a lot of money, you can get whatever the heck you want, the cars, the clothes, all of that. Right. And I realized like millionaires are actually the most like conservative with their money. Like they manage it well. Mm-hmm. And you would never, like, I didn't even realize it. And from that point on, I started putting structure back in my life. Like I started like dealing with my finances. I created a budget, which eventually kind of like led me to where I was. And I ended up filing bankruptcy. And that in itself was like another, another downward spiral for me, because remember, I never really heard of all the successful people I looked up to. I never really like heard of them failing. Mm-hmm. I always heard about, just like the like glitter and gold part of their journey. Right. And I just figured out, like I'd rather kind of just wipe away the debt right away and like use that money and invest it in something. Right. I didn't know what, but then I actually started like, I had stopped a couple of things. I stopped that caused me to stay in a rut. Mm-hmm. Was I stopped praying. I stopped listening to personal development. Mm-hmm. I stopped hanging around the people like, like people like you or other people that I had that were like actually going for it, going after their goals, right. That were like, had businesses. And, it was no wonder I stayed in that rut for like well over a year. Mm-hmm. And then after a while, I realized, I just felt like there was a void there for me. Mm-hmm. Like just something was missing. Like on paper, mm-hmm. I looked relatively successful on paper. I got all these degrees and like, I had this job where I was like, like in charge of everything. And it was like, I could talk about it and look good all day, but that wasn't what fulfilled me. Right. And, after a while, one of the first thing I did that I would say I would attribute 100% to me bouncing back was I started praying again. I started like rebuilding because I was mad at God. I thought he forsook me. I thought he like left me. I was like, God, like he don't really, if he was there, he wouldn't have let me fail. But that was actually the biggest blessing he gave me. I just didn't realize it at the time. And I realized I was trying to hit, these goals and be successful by myself without God. So as you could imagine, God was probably up there laughing at me. But when I made the decision to start like praying again, I'm not going to lie, it felt kind of silly. I wasn't even sure if he could hear me. I thought he was mad at me and all this other stuff. But I was just consistent. And eventually I feel like he started to give me my vision back, because it's like I had this grand vision of the future. And then when I stopped praying, it just was gone. And as I started praying, even when I felt like, he probably don't hear me or anything, like I started getting my vision back. And it's like he started like, like giving me little things, like giving me little thoughts, little ideas. And another thing that I did was I started listening to personal development again, audio, like Jim Rohn, Ed Milet. I don't know if you know who that is, but he was like he was somebody I listened to that made a really big difference for me.
Right.
And one of the things I realized is there's been a lot of like successful people that I've looked up to, a lot of millionaires that have filed bankruptcy before. They've hit rock bottom before. They've hit the low of lows. Some of them like lost way worse than what I lost. And they after hearing those stories, I realized, you know what? I'm in good company. Like I was thinking this was like my canker sore, when really it was like my breakthrough moment. And that's why like when you were like, you thought I just shared it with you, but then Lord was like, oh yeah, she told me that too, girl. But that's because I actually started, like, I was trying to hide it. Like I was trying to hide it and pretend that didn't happen. But my breakthrough came from actually sharing, like bringing my darkness to the light, like just sharing it. And then I started kind of having freedom from it. And then slowly but surely, I started putting one foot in front of the other. And what I mean by that, I started showing up to real estate meetups. I started reconnecting with other investors. And one thing that contributed to the success I had before was I stayed around the campfire. That means staying around the people who are like on fire. Like you can't be around the campfire and not get warm. So I don't know if you remember, Martine, you was calling me like, oh, hey, I'm going to this meetup on your end in like DC. And I was like, okay, I'll go. Now I'm an introvert, so I would rather actually just stay home on the couch and like read a book or like, do something one-on-one. So it took something for me to like start pushing myself to go out and like even talking to people. And one thing I got, like I don't know if I ever told you this, you played a very big role in me bouncing back, because by me like showing up, I saw you, like you were just talking to everybody. And I was like, how did she do it? Like if I didn't see that, I probably would have just showed up. Like, okay, I showed up and then left right out. But I was like, you know what? I heard Robert Kiyosaki say something like, I don't know, it's not going to be verbatim, but it's like most people, when they want to make more money, they like start looking for another job or something. What wealthy people do when they want to make more money is they start increasing their network. And so I realized, like, let me start talking to these people. And I started connecting with some really dope people. Like, they were really cool. And yeah, like that. So step one was pretty much just share my story, or reconnecting to God was step one. Step two was just, sharing about the thing that was kind of like your ball and chain, because eventually it don't feel like a ball and chain anymore when you start sharing it. And then the third thing was just staying around the campfire, networking, connecting with people, talking to them. And like, it was uncomfortable for me, but I knew I had to do it. Otherwise, what else would I do?
Right.
Um,
What I noticed is when you network with people, the other person is just as uncomfortable as you are talking to
right,
a stranger. So it's
right, pretty
like
much.
you gotta become not strangers, and there's only one
Right,
way to do that. Start talking.
pretty much. Yeah. And the people, because some people make it look so easy, but I realize like it does get easier after a while when you start talking to people and realize they're just as nervous as you,
Right.
y'all have the same goals. Y'all are both human beings.
Right.
And so, and then I would say one of the biggest things that happened for me was it was one morning I was praying, and I challenged God, and I just got so fed up of like, my situation, like getting another job and like waking up, going to work, doing the same thing day in, day out. And then like, the weekends you felt like you broke out of jail. And then Sunday it felt like you were going back into jail. Like it's time to put my suit on and go back into jail. And I remember like it was one meetup that I went to, and I think Christina Spells was there. And I was just telling her like, I got this bankruptcy thing. So, probably my dreams of being a landlord are over. Ain't nobody giving me a loan. And she said something like that I didn't think about. I think she talked about business credit. But I was just getting fed up with where I was. So the next day I was praying, and I told God, I said, God, if you're the God that makes a way out of no way, then make a way for me. And I promise, like, I'll talk about it all the time. And from that point on, I felt like something shifted. And then pretty much in the fall of pretty much last year, I went to this I took this course with, it was like, I think the course was how to build $1 million portfolio or something like that. And I was looking at a lot of YouTube videos, but what that course did, pretty much the key is I reinvested in myself. Now that course was a little pricey. It wasn't like, Fortune Builders pricey where they try to get you to sell your house or like, It was like, I think I spent like about $2,500, which is the most I've ever spent in, investing in myself apart from like college. But one thing that did, I wasn't even sure if I should have did that with the money I had, but I was like, after I like made that deposit, I was just like, I don't know if this is the right decision, but I better make this decision right. And so I was like, when I showed up, I was like, I'm not leaving here until I create a map of how I'm going to do it, and I'm going to execute, because this was a lot of money. I need to get my ROI. I need to get my money back on my return, which is exactly what I did. Because straight out of that course, what I did was I found a deal. And I didn't find it, like I found it on Craigslist too. I remember something they said in that course was that, like a lot of people, Craigslist, even the MLS is saturated. The thing is, people moved on because they think it's saturated. This deal's still there. I found my deal on Craigslist for like $36,000. I put about $35,000 into it. After repair value was $140,000.
Oh yeah.
But the thing is, remember, I have a bankruptcy on my credit report. So how am I gonna burn? How am I going to cash out, refi? Because nobody's going to be, a lot of like lenders aren't gonna give me a loan on that. So I realized I had to get creative. And I not only raised private money, and I also convinced my private lender to be the grantor. Actually, backtrack really quick. I spoke to somebody in my network, and I was like, look, I got this great deal, but, I don't know how I'm going to fund it. And they said, why does your name need to be on those documents? And I was like, oh. He was like, you could still control the deal. And your name doesn't need to be on those documents. You don't need to be the guarantor of the loan or whatever. So it was like I can't believe I didn't think about that. So I got a private money lender whose credit score, he had the credit and the cash. His credit score is like an 800 or something. He had the cash. So he didn't tell me yes right away. I had to call him 5 times. And everything in me was like, yo, stop calling him. It's kind of like, I would say it's almost like your limitations or the devil trying to hold you back damn near. Like my limitations wanted to tell me like, stop calling him. He ain't going to do it. But then I'm very determined and I can be very competitive as well. I kept calling him because even though he wasn't telling me yes, one thing for sure is he wasn't telling me no either. And I remember I called him on the 5th time and I locked that up. And he told me the reason he did it is because he wasn't going to do it. He saw the numbers were good, but he was like, what made him do it is he saw how hungry I was. And one thing I realized is that a lot of people, especially successful people, they don't mind working with you, but they want to see that you want it. They're willing to invest time in you and even money into you, but they want to see that you're hungry, that you're willing to do whatever it takes. And locked up that deal, and then, locked up another one shortly after that with creative financing. And one thing I'll say is that if let's say I didn't have a bankruptcy, let's say I had cash there, I would have tried to do all of that on my own. See, that's what 2 things, reconnecting with God got me to see that I can't do that all on my own. Like it's not me that's great, it's like God that's great, and if God is in me, then we're great together. And I can't fail that way. And then just creating that partnership. A lot of people, they don't want to give up a portion of the profit of the deal. They rather lose the deal than partner with somebody. And I realized it's greatness and teamwork. And I just kind of created a small team that will help me get further than where I was. And I would have tried to do all of that myself. I would have tried to use my own money. But because of that failure, it had me to go outside the box and look at, how can I make this work? Okay, I'll probably have to raise private money. Or, okay, I'll probably have to learn how to convince a seller why it would be an opportunity for them to be the bank for me. And yeah, I would say, that I would attribute all of that to how everything else went down afterwards.
Right. So I know you kind of glanced over it a little bit, but you mean to tell me that from this situation, you found out how to do all of this stuff that you couldn't personally do, even if you wanted to do it on your own, you were not able to do it on your own, but you came up with these ideas, with these strategies. So now that you can continue to do this over and over, no matter what situation you're in, because you were in a situation where you had to figure it out.
Right. Yeah. And I mean,
I feel like that's major, because how many people make up excuses about how it ain't no deals out there. I can't find a deal. Nobody's going to sell their house for that little bit of money. Oh, I'm not going to be able to do it because my credit score is too low. Oh, I can't do it because I ain't got the money. You just dispelled all the myths.
Right, because what I realized is your excuses could be either your excuse or your reason why you got to do it. And you got to shift the questions that you ask yourself, because like you said, it's easy, remember, your mindset is designed to keep you safe. It doesn't want you to take risks. So you got to train your mind to ask yourself the right questions.
Right.
Instead of kind of telling yourself, yeah, I can't do that because of XYZ, you got to, like, what I had to do for myself, I had to start asking myself, well, how can I get it done? And that kind of like creates a whole new perspective to look. Like, you just start asking yourself, how can I get it done? How can I afford it? How can I close this deal? What will it take for them to be the bank, the seller to be the bank for me?
Right.
And
that's
you
like,
could figure anything out.
He like Robert Kiyosaki talks about that a lot, because I'm like a huge fan of Robert Kiyosaki, and like I read a lot of his books, and a lot of people, he'll say what his rich dad said and what his poor dad said, and he'll be like, poor dad will say, we can't afford that, and then the rich dad will say, well, how can we afford that? And then he'll start thinking of ways to pay for whatever he wants. And I mean, it basically boils down to an asset paying for whatever they were looking to get. So, so this is like huge, it's major. What made you, I know you said it already about your prayer, but what made you so open to share all of this stuff? Because I know, like, I'm thinking if it was me, I'm like, oh, look at it. So I feel like it just takes a tremendous amount of courage to share this, because a lot of people, we don't talk about our failure. So it looks like nobody ever fails, but they do all the time.
Well, I just kind of realized that it was other people that had the courage to share about their failures and then how they bounced back that really kind of like got me out of my rut. Mm-hmm. So I guess like one of the things I got really present to is that my failure, I thought it was there to destroy me, but it was actually there to set me up, not just me up to win, but it's like it created a story for other people to win too.
Right.
Because now I actually like, if you like think about it, if you like hit a certain level of success, like how like people could probably connect to you a bit more if you actually like dealt with like, challenges versus, oh yeah, it was straight upward from the moment I started versus, I had my obstacles, I had my challenges just like you, and this is how I conquered it. So I realized that like breakdown was just a setup for a breakthrough for me, so that it could my hope is that it will help somebody else who either, has been in a rut or will end up in a rut, especially with this whole corona thing. Mm-hmm. There might be some people are about to deal with some real challenges depending on how they look at it. But my hope is that, it'll get somebody out of their rut and help them to like just, conquer those challenges and eat them for breakfast.
That's right. Oh. So I know you mentioned some inspirational speakers that you listen to for personal development and things like that. But what are some like good books or some good resources that people can tap into that, even if you're not, because like we all face challenges, but personally growing, that's a lifelong journey. You have to continue to grow as a person. Otherwise, you're going to be falling behind. So what are some like good resources that you think really can help people that are listening?
So we were talking about this before because there's so many like really good resources that help me, but a couple that come to mind is The Millionaire Next Door really helped me because I had this whole other context of what it means to be a millionaire. And that was kind of like what kind of like set me up to fail at first. But once I actually got like the mindset of like how a millionaire thinks, especially in terms of managing their money or where their money goes or where they invest their time and their money, that was a game changer for me because everything I did thereafter became in alignment with that new thought process.
Right.
And what's that? The book, The Millionaire Secrets, The Secrets of the Millionaire Mind.
Mm-hmm.
That was good for me because that was kind of like another book that kind of got me in the mindset of things. But one of the things that I like remember from there is that anytime you're like pretty much like complaining or blaming anyone else for like, you know, why your life is going the way it is, you already lost. And I realized like during like my phase when I kind of had that time period where, you know, things weren't going right, I was blaming everyone else and everything else for why I was where I was. And it wasn't until I kind of started taking responsibility, because I could have been right. I could have had a lot of agreement that I was right for what I was saying, but it wasn't getting me results.
Right.
So that book helped me kind of like shift my mindset and see that I need to take 100% responsibility for everything that happens in my life. And once I started doing that, then my results started shifting.
Right. And when you were talking about having like a burning desire, a burning dream that, you know, you were working a job, you had to go back to working a job. And even though the job was nice, that wasn't what you desired. So you still felt unfulfilled. That reminded me of that book that, I don't know if it's still your favorite book, but isn't it The Dream Giver? Is the name of
I love The Dream Giver.
When he was
That's
talking
like
about,
favorite.
Yeah, when he was like, especially like when your mind is like, no, don't do this, blah, 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 knowing that you really want to do this because you want to make it happen, but you're like, oh, this person's going to say no, and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
So that reminded me of that book. I like that book a lot. It's really good.
Yeah, I would totally add that book in. If I feel like everybody who I've ever had read that book, they always come back and say, like, I feel like that book was written about me. Like, it's so relatable. And I love like books that are in storybook form, but that book really just kind of like, that helped to shift my mindset as well and kind of give me a setup for what to expect on my journey.
Right. So is there any advice that you want to give to anyone that, you know, they might just be starting? I mean, I feel like this whole episode was nuggets after nuggets after nuggets after advice after advice. But is there anything else that you want to add, any advice you want to give somebody that may be going through, you know, like maybe this is their first big failure, or maybe just they're going through a little rough patch, or maybe they're just new and they just need something to help them get over the bump or the hump or whatever you want to call it?
My biggest advice, I would say the ones that come to mind is, you know, God has been my source. I would attribute 100% of where I was to where I've come to Him. So, you know, if you know, like stay connected to like the word, like the Bible has a lot of personal development in there. All that stuff that you read in books, all of that's in the Bible. So stay connected to your source. I feel like He won't steer you wrong. Like, you know, your vision comes from God. Right. And then the next thing I would say is like, you know, be mindful of who's in your circle. Who are you hanging around? Because they're either kind of like bringing you down or taking you up. You get to decide or choose. Right. But be very mindful about who you're hanging around. Make sure you're always keeping close to the fire. Right. Like stay close to the fire, because, you know, if you're around the fire, you're going to get warm. It's just like bound to happen. Right. And, you know, just keep investing in you and watch your like attitude. One thing I heard, I'm gonna steal this from Zig Ziglar. I think it was your attitude determines your altitude, and I found that to be like 100% true. Like even sometimes, even with this coronavirus thing going on, like I caught myself one time kind of like down in the dumps, like, oh man, I hope this doesn't happen. But then I caught it right away, and I had to shift my attitude. And then, you know, like everything, just like the whole world looked different once I shifted my attitude. So that's it. Just go ahead.
I was going to say, I was talking to someone earlier today, actually, and they were like, well, what do you think about the changes in the market and blah, blah, blah? And I'm like, I'm loving it. I was like, everybody wants to sell. I had at least 2 or 3 people that wanted to sell because the tenant's not paying the rent next month.
Exactly.
Oh, you want to sell, huh?
All you did was you shifted your attitude. You noticed more opportunity.
Right.
It's not necessarily that more opportunity came. You just started noticing it.
Right.
You probably wouldn't have noticed that if your attitude was like, oh man, the market sucks. So
man, I don't know if it's because like recently we had like a organizational shift where we're a lot more organized, like we're time blocking and stuff, and that's not my specialty. My specialty is make it happen, get it done, not make the schedule.
Right.
I am not that person. Anyway, so I got somebody to come in, and hopefully I'll have her on the podcast too to help make it a lot more organized. And I'm like, oh man, we're killing it. We're crushing the goals this week. I was like, scorecard finna be green. So I've been loving it personally. Like I really, in terms of like people's health and things like that, I wish that no one gets the virus, and if you do get it, that you recover and stuff like that. But as far as how I'm feeling over here, I'm loving it.
Right. Exactly.
So, I'm ready. I'm ready. I've been preparing for this. Not necessarily this, but any types of shifts that are going to happen, I've been preparing. So
right.
I'm excited. Very excited.
Right. Yeah. Pretty much. See, your attitude is just like, it's opportunity in any circumstance, pretty much. You can kind of hear that.
Tell me about it. I feel a little bad. I ain't buying some extra stock when the market is low. I'm over here like, can it just drop one more time?
Right.
But Sheveir, I really enjoyed having you on the podcast today. I really enjoyed you sharing your story. You have been one of my favorite people to interview because I don't really have to ask that many questions. You just tell us everything. You tell us everything you want to know. I don't have to pull it out of you. None of that. But before we go, is there anything you want to leave the people with?
You know what? I would just say like, a lot of people came into like start at the beginning of the year, like 2020 is my year. And then I know some people got discouraged. Well, guess what? 2020 could still be your year or it could be your downfall. You get to choose what 2020 is for you. Right. So I don't know about the people out there. I'm choosing that 2020 is still my year and I'm looking forward to what's to come for this year. So. Right.
I feel you. And I just want to say one last thing about you since I'm on the podcast. You said something nice about me. So I want to tell people something that from the first time we hung out. So Sheveir and I, we met because I slid in her DMs. I noticed that we were both in the same sorority. And I saw she was flipping houses. So I was like, oh, I'm about to hang out with the sorors that's flipping houses. That's what I'm about to do. So I ended up being in the DC area and we hung out and we were talking. I think we went to dinner or something like that or grabbed drinks or something. I can't remember. Anyway, and we were talking and you just fed me spiritually so much. I was just like, oh my God, this is what I need in my life. I felt, when was that? I don't maybe it was like 2015, maybe? I don't remember.
Yeah, it was probably 2015 or 2016.
Yeah, something like that. And I remember at that time, my business was going okay, but I just, when you see the vision, you're just like, I want to hit this. And if your vision is this and you right here, you like, what is going on? Like, I need to be up here, So right. When I was just talking to her, you just made me feel so good. I needed that work. I just felt so good. So just want to say thank you, girl. I appreciated that.
Oh, good.
Well,
all right.
Well, I'm going to wrap this episode up. So until next time, Do It Movement listeners, see ya! Thanks, guys, for checking out the Do It Movement podcast this week. I hope we inspired you to make some power moves now. If you haven't already, make sure you follow us for more info on our guests and new episodes at DoItMovement Pod on Instagram and at DoItMovementPod.com. Make sure as you apply some of this knowledge, you tag us along the way by adding #DoItMovement so that we can recognize the change makers. See you next week.